Hello, I'm Austin Gordon.
And I'm Daniel Hoare.
We're students of Aberfoyle Park High School in Adelaide, South Australia. We've examined the climate change variables and made predictions for the South Australian region.
Adelaide is the capital of South Australia, surrounded by the Adelaide Hills to the east and the Gulf St Vincent to the west. The Adelaide Hills form a bowl shape that decreases the effect that weather from outside areas has upon the Adelaide Plain. Adelaide generally receives an average winter temperature of 16 degrees Celsius and summer temperature of 28 degrees Celsius. But in the middle of summer, the mercury can reach a temperature above 40 degrees Celsius. We compared the conditions in the Adelaide CBD, the light section in the diagram, to Strathalbyn, a rural town east of the Adelaide Hills.
The purpose of our project was to analyse the recent changes in climate of the city of Adelaide and make predictions based upon them. Using graphing technology, we found the trends in the rainfall and temperature over the last century and various other periods to justify our predictions.
The CSIRO predicts a reduction in rainfall in Adelaide of 3% by 2030 and 5% by 2070 compared to 1990 levels. The northern half of South Australia has become wetter while southern coastal regions have become drier. The CSIRO has also found that from 1907 to 2007, the air temperature in Australia has increased by 0.89 degrees Celsius, and in South Australia it has increased by 0.96 degrees Celsius. Each decade has been warmer than the previous decade since the 1950s.
According to NASA, the decade of 2000 to 2009 was the hottest on record. This concurs with our findings for the Adelaide area. The period since 2000 has shown a substantial increase in the rate of warming compared to even the 1990s. In this graph of temperature in the Adelaide CBD, you can see a rapid rise of the last 10 years or so, which agrees with NASA's findings. We smoothed our data using the 10-year averages, with the error bars being standard deviation. The CSIRO reports that each decade has been warmer than the previous decade since the 1950s, which, if correct, means that the trends observed over the last 50 years, especially the last decade, will increase in temperature. Our data agrees with this. The top graph is the temperature in Adelaide CBD since 1960, which reflects the findings of the CSIRO. The lower graph, on the other hand, is only from the year 2000 and has a slope of 4 times greater than the other. This agrees with NASA's statement that the last 10 years is the hottest on record. Using the 50-year trend, we predict an increase in the temperatures of 1.1 degrees Celsius by 2030 and 2.3 degrees by 2070 compared to the 1990 levels. We use this graph for prediction as 10 years is too short of a time period to be considered a trend. As we can see from these graphs, Strathalbyn, represented by the graph at the top, has shown an increase in minimum temperature compared to Adelaide, the lower graph, which has remained almost constant, even decreased. This graph represents
the trends in rainfall over the last 100 years for Adelaide in red and Strathalbyn in blue. It shows that the CBD has had a slight increase in rainfall, while Strathalbyn's rainfall has reduced considerably over the same time. These are the 50-year trends for Adelaide, red, and Strathalbyn, blue. This still shows rainfall increasing for the CBD and reducing in rural areas. Based on these trends, we predict a difference of plus 3% in Adelaide and negative 14.5% for Strathalbyn in 2030, based on 1990 levels.
If current trends continue, the Adelaide area can expect an increase of 2 degrees Celsius in average temperatures by 2070 and more hot days.
It will become substantially drier over the adjacent rural areas, while the Greater Adelaide area will receive a modest increase in rainfall.
Thank you for your attention.